All right. Hello, 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 everybody, to another magnificent episode of Terran Tuesday. I hope y'all doing well out there. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing great. It looks like Moral Officer Gran is echoing the same sentiment. Today, we got a magnificent topic to dig into, and that's all revolving around agriculture. And I guess we could also say not fauna, foliage. What's the fancy word for saying the green stuff?
um, Verdant growth.
Close enough and much more poetic than the scientists could ever come up with. We're
Yeah.
going that direction, everybody. And Black Knight, you were definitely the one to choose this, and you were talking in the background how your own world has a lot of interesting and unique ways of exploring the agriculture side of things. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you've been up to this last week since we've spoken and dig right into it, man?
Yeah, I've been working on a few projects as always. The eighth, the next book in the Star Shelter series, which will be the eighth. I'm also, as usual, doing like refurbishment and new edits and reformatting on perhaps the last of the older versions of the books, which I hope I can complete before the end of this year. But this week, the past week, like the last 4 days of the past week, I was mostly working on a new series for my Patreon subscribers, which is about an Italian
Yeah,
officer
yeah.
and his unit. And he does not have a mandolin, and he's not named Corelli, but he does look like Nicolas Cage. And he has a string instrument. Probably later this week, my Patreon subscribers will read about it. But this is not the topic of tonight's conversation. Um, it is actually agriculture in the context of fantasy and science fiction. Um,
Yay, yay.
yeah, and first to introduce agriculture, even though agriculture should need no introduction because without it, we'd be dead, quite dead,
Very much
or
so.
or roving bands of cannibals or something. Um, well, basically, you put seeds in soil, you give them water
Well, that
and
would be probably
fertilize.
basic gardening. I think
Yeah,
agriculture would be that
yeah,
on a
but on
larger
massive,
scale.
on a
Yeah.
mass scale. Yeah, so that's like the gist of it. The thing is that in for the most part of human history, we've had some agriculture even from the early civilizational
Yeah.
stages. Of course, the plants they did not look like the plants that we have now because they weren't um, cultivated enough, and it was supplanted by lots and lots of hunting. So it was like on a smaller scale, but it was still agriculture. So it was different. It was probably what most fantasy fiction authors would have in their fantasy realms, and it's called like regenerative agriculture, which uses lots of. Oh, hello, Snow.
Hey,
Hello.
Snow.
Hey, how you doing?
I was introducing the topic.
Yes, you are. You just go right ahead. You're telling a good story.
Yeah. So for the most part, that was the old school farming, and of course, crop rotation, planting cover crops, which are different plants. Some have quite powerful roots, which go quite deep and can extract minerals from deeper parts of the soil, not just like the top part. And of course, you have like natural fertilizers, uh, um, cows. If your fantasy realm has cows, maybe not big cows, maybe something else. And the plots, the farm plots, which are not like, which are resting in between rotations, you plant stuff which your herbivore, like cattle, will munch. And you also have lots of flowers, maybe something like dandelion like, to attract the bees and stuff. So because many farms have honey, like, these things with the pollinating capabilities, which buzz around and pollinate your crops. It's good to have them on your farms, especially if you're doing like lots of farming and you have lots of land. And of course, the flies will attract birds because the birds will eat the flies. And when you unleash your herd, like your small herd, and in medieval times, they had pigs. But the pigs were like mostly lean pigs, like furry pigs, like the Mangalitsa pig in Romania. They weren't like pink and super fat. They were quite lively, and in most cases, they interbred with wild boars. So you had these pigs. You would unleash them upon these fields in between rotations, and they would eat um, all the plants and everything, and they will shit all over the field, and more plants will grow, and the shit will attract flies, and the larvae of the flies will turn into flies, and the birds will eat them, and the birds will nest around. It's like it's a it's almost the same as Mother Nature, but you're helping. And in the case of fantasy agriculture, you probably have some alchemy. But in my own experience, I chose to treat alchemy more like the chemical fertilizers which are used now, and they are quite powerful, but they diminish the soil. Or you may have like alchemically modified seeds which give greater yields, but they cannot be like, you can't reuse them. Like the plant will just grow whatever it grows, whatever. Let's say it's barley. You grow the barley, you harvest the barley, and then it's it. That's it. You have to go and buy your new seeds from your Monsanto like alchemist, or something like that. It's logical. Then of course you have perhaps wizards who can affect the climate. They can summon rain, or make it so that your fields have lots and lots of sunlight, and it's so they could grow well, because the plants, they need the sunlight. Or maybe they have these spells which create these gaseous fumes, because plants, they create mass not just from sunlight. They take minerals from the soil, they feed from the soil, and they feed from also from the air. They transform certain gases into matter, like, let's say, carbon. So yeah, it's not to say it's not interesting, but when you begin to go deep into these, like, magical and alchemical details, on top of all the already functional medieval level style of regenerative farming, which was hard as fuck, you can perhaps delve too deep. But it would be good if you have it. If you can explain to your readers how is this the economy of your fantasy world even function. Because if you just show them to a village, and that village has just like trees outside, no farm fields, and they have, like, somehow they have grain and all kinds of foods which are produced through mass agriculture, then it's not gonna be good. You're going to lose them. And I think that I should speak about the scientific side later.
Definitely. One thing that you brought up that I think goes heavily into the agriculture side of things that a lot of people really don't bring up unless they're kind of into, I guess you say, gardening or agriculture, or really study the subject, as it's just as complex as computers. And just like we have a lot of science fiction revolving around complex computing, this is very much the same thing, but on a much more biological sort of spectrum when it comes to these machines that are powered by the earth itself. But all right, Snow, you recently joined us. How have you been since the last time we spoken to you? And I know you got a lot to talk about on the subject, because I'm sure you've been around plants for quite some time.
That's a nice way to say I'm old. Thank you, James. Thank you. No, I'm doing great. Actually, I said live on a farm, live on 36 acres out here in Central Texas. Kind of a harsh environment in some ways. It can be challenging. And certainly it is a huge influence on my own series, Watcher of the Dam, because in a post-apocalyptic world, you have to learn how to survive. And one of the ways you survive is through agriculture. In a hunter-gatherer society, which is what you start off with, eventually you get to a place where you like, I want to have people living together in a sort of a tribe, and they know something about agriculture, so they have to revive the art. And I love what Black Knight said about it, that it is alchemy. It is not just the science of agriculture, it is the magic, the art that is involved. There is something supernatural about trying to grow life out of the ground to feed yourself. And at the same time, something that is desperately needed. When you are hungry, you will understand what it means. It's certainly
agriculture is about predictable results. That's why.
Yeah, when you we talk about it being someone's boring, there's nothing boring about it when your life depends on it. And in fact, at one time, this is reading older texts, and we're talking about the American farmer from 1850. It was a business. It is a business that is designed to keep people alive. And certainly, much like the Industrial Revolution, there were agricultural revolutions throughout history, just starting with the first time that that man realized he could put a seed in the ground and add water and it would grow. And they could cultivate patches of certain kinds of wild plants. And one day they figured out they could gather those seeds and they could create more of that same kind of plant. And they could pull out the other weeds so that way they would be able to harvest it and get a better harvest. That's your first real agricultural revolution. And don't forget about also raising animals. That is all a huge part of agriculture, is taking the flora and fauna of the area and creating your own base of food and giving yourself the security to be able to set up and work on it. And we have that first revolution where people learned how to work the soil of wherever they were from. And when we're looking at it from a survivalistic viewpoint about how do we find the energy to go out and plant something, how do we keep enough food on the table to go out and plant the next crop? It is a science. It is learning how to feed the people on your table just enough food that they're not overeating, but that they have enough calories to last through the day to plant the next generation of food. And will you make it to harvest? Are you going to survive that hot, dry summer in Texas if you don't have any fruit or any vegetables or you don't have any meat? And that's why hunting is so important in harsh environments, because it provides high caloric content. And that's why hunting societies frequently exist side by side in an agrarian society as well. They usually require both. And when you're in a more kind environment down towards the tropics, for instance, where you have warmer days and nights, you're not burning off so many calories. You have fruits and vegetables readily available that are growing on the trees. You have instant calories from that, but you still have to be able to subsist. You have to be able to get along. And when you're hungry, going out and digging a trench and putting something in the ground that you could have eaten becomes a gamble. Are you going to eat this wheat and maybe survive 2 more weeks and then you have nothing left? Or are you going to put it in the ground and it could die and you're going to die in 2 more weeks anyway? Or will it grow? There's so much science involved with keeping your characters alive in a survivalist mentality. It actually can be fascinating. One of the best examples of this is actually Andy Weir's book, The Martian, where he goes to Mars and he, of course, is stranded. He's injured and he has to try to grow potatoes on Mars. And just having my mother, like as a lot of you know, was a sharecropper. She actually picked cotton as a child. She was almost starved to death. I've talked about that before on the show. And she was very intimately involved with the soil all of her life. She insisted that there be a garden at the house because she knew what it was like to be hungry, and she never wanted to rely on just a store to keep her alive. And she grew up farming. And so her experience with that made The Martian such an intense experience for me, because I remembered her stories of being so hungry that you would have eaten the seed potatoes themselves, but you had to save something to plant for the next year, or you would end up with everyone dead by summer. And so trying to keep a crop going in the winter, trying to keep something growing in a harsh environment where you have to live through it, it can be fascinating to read that. It is about the storyteller. How do you set up your audience to where it's not just about the seeds and the planting, it's about the human nature of hunger. Building hunger in a story, building that yearning for food. We have a tendency, and we've talked before about, so many times we talk about food and recipes and things like that because it's a huge part of our world building. But hunger is an important part of world building as well. People who don't understand what it means to be hungry, who have been blessed enough that they've lived their entire lives without being hungry, need us as writers to be able to describe what it really means to be hungry. And not just, I'm hungry, I'd like to go to the fridge and get something to eat, but I'm hungry and I have to use what food I have left to try and put another crop in, and starving and waiting for that and feeling your body cannibalize itself and being weak, but having to get up to go out to do the next day's work, or you will not have a harvest. And what it means to put your hands down on the soil and find those sweet potatoes that you thought maybe wouldn't grow. And now there's going to be a feast because there's finally enough food. There's a reason why we have these harvest festivals at this time of year. There's a reason it becomes religious. There's a reason why we have Thanksgiving. And it's because it was such an incredible blessing to look and see food where there had been none. And you can hunt, you can fish, you can do those things when game is plentiful, but you have to be healthy and you have to be active. What happens when you're not as fit anymore? When you're in those days, perhaps you were 50 or 60 years old, you were already old, your bones worn down from the harsh life you were living. It made all the difference in the world to have food that was grown nearby, that you could make a loaf of bread and put it on the table and it would last for several days, unlike meat that has to be cooked and eaten right away in a society with no refrigerators, or maybe has an evaporation refrigerator, which certainly can be made with clay, but that has to be in a dry environment. In a moist, humid environment that's hot, that food spoils. It goes bad and you can't eat. You have to go hunt the next day. If you're injured, what do? Well, in an agrarian society, there's a loaf of bread for the hunter. It's available. Somebody brings it to them and it's going to last for several days. And if it gets stale, you might put a little water on it to replenish it, or put some milk in it.
Or make a bread stew.
Yes, you put it in bread stew. It lasts. It's an incredible infusion of calories. And a lot of people will say, well, why don't they just eat some fruit? There's sugar in fruit and it'll help give you the calories and you can go out and have energy. Fruit perishes. Without the modern technology that we have to can fruit and to keep it, or to pickle it, or to preserve it through preserving and drying, you don't have fruit all year long. My mother, when she was growing up, an orange was always in the toe of the Christmas stocking because it was a treasure. For the rest of our lives, we would have oranges that would be given to us at Christmas because she was so starving for a piece of fruit by Christmas, because there is no fruit. There's none left. You don't have a refrigerator to put it in to preserve it. You had to wait for someone to grow some and bring it from a tropical place. And so an orange becomes a treasure for someone who hasn't seen fruit since September. We forget what it's like to live on the edge of starvation, that even if our bellies are full, tomorrow might not bring the same thing. That in a world of hunters and gatherers, that you may be the one that's left behind because you broke your leg. What happens to you? How are you going to survive? The agrarian society changed that world for us so much. And when we start writing it into our science fiction or fantasy novels, when we write that agriculture in, it can be an integral part of the world building that we do. And it should be. It's part of that rich heritage of humanity, but it also is a story that helps preserve not just the traditions of farming, but the actual science of it, the actual ability to go out. And in a world where we had the Green Revolution, which is a wonderful thing, which actually created the ability for more people to live on this earth with full bellies, a lot of people don't know about subsistence farming or original techniques. Our books have a chance to help share those farming capabilities. And one of the things I love about Black Knight's story is that he actually starts off with a simple watermelon farmer, she the bunny, and just those things of being able to grow a piece of fruit, to love it and enjoy it. A lot of our people don't know what that means. We can share those stories and make them exciting and make them an adventure in and of themselves and help our own world building along the way.
Yes, I love that you mentioned Lily and the water balance, and I was about to say something about all of it, because I mean, even here on Earth, you have plants and crops which would not grow everywhere. They would grow somewhere where it's like the best place for them, but not everywhere. Let's say if you grab water balance and plant them in the desert, as you probably know quite well, both of you, I highly doubt they'll be good, plentiful yield of watermelons in the desert. But if you plant them here, where is like the climate is moist, and you plant them somewhere like even on the mountainside, watermelons will grow. And I've seen in my youth when I still had my healthy legs, my knees, and I was climbing up some mountains. I would often see wild watermelons, and they're like really small. They're not huge. They're small. Some are perhaps the size of a like baseball. The
Yeah.
but they're delicious. I mean, they're full of seed. They're literally full of seeds, but they're delicious. As for farming, specifically in the science fiction setting and my setting, I made sure to do some research about the terraforming, and you can have sustainable, high yield, mass agriculture without terraforming, because of course you can't just go on the moon and start planting seeds, just like in that book you mentioned, Snow, about Mars. I think he had like domes, or a tent or something, was it, where he planted the
Yes,
potatoes?
that had the
Yeah.
dome actually that he
Yeah,
sent.
yeah. And so in Star Shattered, it's pretty much like this. They, like the early colonists on Mars, and the moon, or how they call it now, Luna. They had to build these farming domes where everything was like survival farming. It wasn't, you couldn't have like massive yields, but they would supplement the supplies which were sent from Earth with some farming, and it eventually grew more and more. But all of these domes, you had to use every inch, every centimeter of land to farm something. So they did not have like monoculture farming. They had multi farming, multicultural farming, various kinds of plants, and they would constantly have these like modified biological fertilizers, which this is, what it is. It's refuse. It's human refuse and animal refuse, manure. And they would constantly grab soil from the outside, from the unterraformed planetary surface, and they would enrich it, basically using the method that ancient humans in the Amazon, before the Amazon got ruined, like there was like a massive Amazonian civilization, and they had artificial soil because jungle soils are quite poor. And they created something which scientists today call terra perta, and it's by using fertilizer, compost, and broken pottery, and of course, like bacterial growth from healthy topsoil. And in time, this would like transform, quote unquote, magically. Well, it's science. So basically, people back then, they had this science, and I'm using it because it's real, it exists. I'm using it. Why wouldn't I? And so they gradually, when they terraform the planet, I mean, you have these big machines. There's these atmospheric reactors, the special generators that maintain and strengthen the magnetic field of the planet if it has a weak magnetic field, and in most cases they have weak magnetic fields. So you actually have something to hold the fucking atmosphere, and it wouldn't bleed into space, because otherwise how would you even have agriculture, and how would you even live there? So so the domes, and then when you have like some atmosphere, you begin to plant trees. Of course, you plant forests, first on the mountains, and then like smaller trees in the valleys, and then you have this huge grass. I think it's the same grass that you have in Texas, in America, like the buffalo grass, like the huge grass.
Yeah, it's a blue stem. It's a type of blue stem.
Yeah.
It was like 12-foot roots.
Yeah, exactly the same one. And they to help terraform Mars, they imported buffalo. They actually have giant, massive herds of buffalo, millions upon millions upon millions of them, and they would run around and shit all over everywhere, and they would enrich the soil, and they would munch on this grass. And probably that was like during the last stage of terraformation of Mars with the buffalo. It's basically, some call it the buffalo planet, even because of so many buffalo. But yeah, this is an example. I mean, they had some genetic modification of certain plants. They used fish because they also grew rice. Rice is a great survival culture, because you have lots of nutritional value, and you can feed a lot of people with rice. And they had these like giant rice paddies, and you had fish in them, and just like they do it in China, but like genetically modified fish, like gently genetically modified fish, not buttered fish. But they had to like use some genetic modification, so in the early days of the terraformation, the animals would not die from the radiation and the exposure from the different rays, sun rays, which the atmosphere is not thick enough to protect, and the ozone layer is not strong enough to protect them from all the different types of rays. So you just had to use some genetic mods. Otherwise, as for the reason why Lily was planting watermelons on her colony Carola, was that they could not have other types of melons. They wanted to, but even after the genetic modifications, even if they did all things right, any other melon would have like mutated due to certain bacteria and bugs and other things, other factors which exist in that environment in particular, and would have become invasive plants.
Yeah.
Which would have clashed with the existing ecology, like the mampa trees. Remember your favorite trees, Snow? So yeah, that's why they said, oh, well, okay, we don't want to screw up this unique ecology, because we live in harmony with it. We feed off certain plants and unique roots and herbs that exist in this jungle. Why would we destroy them? Like they just like people in the Amazonian jungle today, they know they have their shamans and others who can grow medicinal herbs, and just like you have them in the United States, like the different native groups who know the places where you can find certain flowers and roots and stuff. Why would you destroy this? This is priceless. This is also agriculture, but it's like this is extreme survival agriculture because it's the other side of the agriculture, which is actually medicine.
Well, and I was so fascinated because you were talking about the watermelons and how this, how you have to have certain conditions for it, and when it grows right, it, does so well. Actually, and you probably saw my blog post that I had. We had the watermelon festival this week for my church, and
Yes, that's why I mentioned them.
yeah, that's Mr. Pruitt actually donated his watermelons to our church so we could actually fundraise to repair our siding. We have a very old church. It's almost 100 years old. For us, it's old.
Wow.
Almost 150 years old, the whole church itself, and the building is 100. And so it got damaged in a storm. So he said, "Oh, I will let you have some watermelons and you can sell them for the church." And so the whole church went out, and we had several young people that wanted to go pick watermelons. So they went out and they picked these beautiful watermelons, and Charleston Grays, and these long watermelons that have a very pink flesh, and little round ones called Crimson Sweets that are very red inside and very sweet, almost like sugar. And then you have ones called Orange Glow that are pear-shaped, and they're fragrant. They have a little bit of a tang to them, but they're fragrant and they smell so divine when you cut them open. All three types growing in his fields. That field, however, is an end result of a long history of agriculture in this area. And you talked about the process of doing it. In this area, the way it was started, of course, is that we had the fields, and they were actually the deep prairie fields that were covered much in blue stem. You had silver blue stem, which I have growing on my property, and then we had the other
By the way, I'm sorry
yeah.
to interrupt. What was the original color of that buffalo grass?
It turns gold in the fall, but it's actually it's a blue green and a clump grass. It's a clumping.
Exactly. And I forgot to tell you that on Mars it always grows dark blue.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah, because of the atmosphere.
Yeah. No, it would stand to reason that it will have different colors. It has different uptake of selenium or other nutrients in the soil. But so as you're moving from those grasses and you say, okay, I want to, and they have this deep soil. The soil here is not blackland prairie. It's actually a tan, a Crockett type soil that has a sandy substrate and a clay beneath it. And so they had these deep roots that were growing into it. Well, they wanted to plant cotton. So they brought in hogs first. And just like you talked about, the hogs rooted up everything. They would have a big field of hogs and they would keep them out there. And this is back about 150 years ago. Brought in all these hogs and they would root it up and they would fertilize the soil, just like you're talking about. Dig. And they would pull up all of the roots of everything and just lay it out bare. There would be nothing left. Then they would come in and they would till the soil and they would put on the cotton. Well, cotton, as it was out here for almost 100 years on my place and also on the places down the road, but cotton eventually depletes the soil unless you're constantly something into it. Monoculture is very difficult on soil, and that's the reason why it only works for a short period of time. And you have to replace the crops and rotate them and let them be fallow and bring in animals to try to
plant peanuts.
Yeah, so they had these, they had the cotton, and it would build up levels of phosphorus in the soil as they were putting in the artificial fertilizers that they had. And it would also grow, you would find clovers on these soils, arrowhead clovers and others. So what happens in the 1950s, 1960s? Well, there's an abundance of phosphorus in the soil, and it gradually starts to become more difficult to farm cotton here. Well, they switched to things that love phosphorus. One of the things that loves phosphorus is watermelon. And so watermelon grows beautifully on phosphorus rich soils. And so that's why Pruitt had his watermelon field over there, is because he's now in the different phase that you have to rotate crops. You have to move them over. And he has this gigantic field filled with all of these beautiful watermelons. And as rich and as wonderful and glorious as they are, of course, you can eat I ate a whole watermelon by myself. I was very excited that I did that because I always wanted to eat one by myself. I had never eaten a whole watermelon by myself. And I did, sitting right there, the whole darn thing. And I still wasn't full because it's very watery. It's even though it's delicious and wonderful, there's not a lot of nutrients in it. It's good for you. It does have healthy benefits and it makes the soul glad, but it doesn't have a lot of calories. And just like you talked about, when you're dealing with food crops as opposed to cotton or some other crop that's there for cloth or other industrial purposes, you have to grow calories. And that's the reason why rice and beans and wheat are so important. And one of the things that we talk about when we talk about terraforming on other planets, we have to terraform here when we're digging those soils. If you're blessed and you're in a place where you don't have to do that, where the soil is already naturally rich, and that blackland prairie soil that we talk about so much for being some of the richest soil on the planet, the prairie soils of America are certainly some of the highest fertility soils in the world, and still are, because people are learning how to use the proper techniques for farming. But when you have soils that aren't naturally that way, you have to terraform your little patch. If you're writing about terraforming and you really want to learn about it, if you really want to know about it, you can read all you want. You really need to go out and put a garden in the ground. Start by terraforming your soil. Start by terraforming your little patch of ground. And look around your yard and see what is out there. Now, for most people, they're going to have a monocrop of Bermuda grass or centipede grass or bluegrass or something like that. That's their lawn. In our case, we're actually on the prairie. And for years, we've had a wonderful crop of a thing called curly dock, which actually has a very deep root. It's yellow. It's actually a wonderful medicine for kidneys and for... And it has a big, deep root that almost looks like a carrot. And the greens are also good to grow. So I actually did just like you said, we're just cultivating that patch and pulling out the weeds and everything. I grew this enormous patch of curly dock, and we would have it in January. It would be the only thing that would grow and be green. And you have to be careful with curly dock because it could give you too much of a type of alkaline acid, which can actually cause you to have calcium binding. So you can only eat it once every like 3 or 4 days. But when you eat it, it gets so rich in iron and stuff. It's great for you. Well, I was able to cultivate that patch, and that is a form of agriculture. But to terraform my land, which has been through the cotton crops and has been through Bermuda grass for the hay fields, I had to terraform some pieces of it. I had to do just like you said. And the fastest way to do terraforming on a small piece of land is chickens. Mm-hmm. If you have room for a big patch of pigs or something else, chickens are fantastic. Now, in terraforming, they're an interesting addition to any kind of world because chickens make noise. If you're fighting for your life and you're attempting to hide in the woods, chickens are probably not your best choice because they will let everyone know where you are. In fact, the Romans carried chickens with them. They actually carried roosters. The armies did, to find the Gauls who were actually living out in the weeds and had chickens as well. And if they were hiding in the woods, they would simply take a rooster, and the rooster would crow immediately. Any enemy encampment that had a rooster would have the rooster crow back. So that's not always the best way for you to stay alive if you have a hostile situation. But if you've got a nice, peaceful little world, or let's say they're starting off peaceful, one of the best ways you can terraform is to bring those chickens out there, let them scratch up that ground. They will eat the little bugs. They will fertilize everything, and they will actually till the upper layer of the soil for you. They eat down the greens and everything else, and they'll actually make a patch of earth bare. So you start with small animals like that. Bunnies are another one that actually are a very good animal for terraforming. I was about to say. You have to make sure that you keep them in a little pen, and you have to put they actually will dig out. So you have to make sure you have like chicken wire or something around it. Of course, then you have to have predator control, make sure that something doesn't get into your wonderful chickens or your wonderful bunnies. But getting a small...
the bunnies and give them railguns.
Yes. So you have to make sure that your little animals are safe. And that's how you terraform your own land. Doing the things that your own soil needs. If your soil is acid, you have to introduce ash into the soil to help alkalize it a little bit, because soils that are too acid can't necessarily grow things. Very acid soil will not grow very many plants. Tomatoes love a slightly acidic soil. Most plants love it a little bit acid or a little bit basic, but you have to sort of mitigate that. And if your soil is very alkaline, If it has a lot of limestone in it, it'll be very basic. Then you have to acidify it. And usually that's by adding grass clippings and other things to make it better. Adding that compost in, adding coffee grounds to it or something to make it. You can terraform your own soil. You don't have to imagine what you have to do on Mars to find out how to do it. Taking the time to spend one season as a writer to till your own patch of ground, to try to modify it, to try to see what it really would take to grow your own food, to make that patch of soil work, to protect it from the elements. Because when we're talking about outer space, we're talking about the elements. And just like we said with the domes, you can create your own domes with ponchos and things like that. There has to be a way to get sunlight in it, but we freely, they're called hoop houses. They use them here frequently in Texas. When it's too hot in the summer, we put a lot of strawberries in hoop houses to keep the sun off of them, especially when it's too hot. And certainly in the fall, you can use those. Learning what you could make with the things that are available to keep your plants alive and protected, even during the winter. Our ancestors did it. They grew things in cold frames. You have the ability to go out and study these things on your own, but it will never be the same as, if you're just reading about it, it will never be the same as actually doing it. Take time to put a 4x4 patch in the ground and try to grow one plant on it. Try to keep that plant alive and try to get it to where it can give you something, because this world building, for me especially as a reader, it can be make or break. When things just magically grow in the ground, I know there are places like that in the world. I've heard Ohio is like that. I've heard it's wonderful. I don't live there, James. I know you probably do have the same thing. It is a very intensive process. And certainly if you've ever heard your ancestors talk about it, about how desperate they were to make sure that things grew and how things had to happen exactly the right way. And you had to add just these things to the soil to make it work. When we do it ourselves, we're not just teaching our audience about it. We are adding that layer of authenticity that can make the difference between life and death for them in the future, and distinguishes our writing from AI, because AI cannot experience what humans experience. It cannot describe the hunger. It can't describe the waiting. It can't describe the anticipation, the magic of seeing a plant grow something that will feed us and our families. And we're adding that layer of authenticity when we actually do something in our stories. And we can't go to outer space maybe this time. Maybe we will in the future. But we might not be able to do that. We might not be able to go out and fight a battle with, 100 men. But we can grow a patch of ground, and we can practice martial arts, and we can learn about gun safety and firing guns and do things. The more things that we do on a very small scale in our own stories help us tell a more authentic story that not only makes it a richer experience for our reader, but actually enriches a future generation with knowledge that they may not have previously had.
Very much so. And I think one of the most important things about that is to realize the amount of problem solving that goes into all of it. Because when you think about those fantastical fictional technologies, you have to know the problems it's got to solve. Especially if you want to go hard sci-fi, you have to know the issues. You have to know what causes them. You have to know on the chemical foundation when it comes to farming, particularly, what is reacting to what, and how do you either calm the inflammation, the reaction, or increase it based off of what you want. There's a science that goes into making fruit bigger. We know, and we've kind of solidified what causes these things on the chemical foundation inside the soil. And much like a computer, like I've said, it's a form of computing, but it's computing on a level of life, if you will, which makes it sort of gives it that mystical element that we've kind of brought up. And it's one thing we actually don't see too much in modern day science fiction writing is blending with these agricultural much needed facilities and institutions because I believe a majority of it really goes into like we have these machines and these machines take care of all these problems, so that way we can just get this aspect of an entire world, this critical aspect that keeps every physical being going, and write it off, when that in itself can provide a lot of interesting storytellings in a multitude of genres. There's a lot of different films that go into this as well, not necessarily just the plant idea, but the messing with biologics mixed with technology on the genetic scale. For instance, we have a movie, I forget what it's called. I'm sure somebody probably knows it. It's a cartoonish movie about a gentleman who could make it rain food, but then he doesn't know how to make it stop raining food. And then that in itself is a film about agriculture, because all of the meals that people eat are broken down into a variety of ingredients that were all grown in dirt. So when you think about science fiction, when you think about your fantastical machines that do these in space, you have to think about temperature. You have to think about the soil and how soil acts and what lives in the soil that could provide nutrients. All of this, if you're trying to go full sci-fi and say, I want to have something that just deals with all of this, and you want to go into depth, you got to know literally the microscopic when it comes to this, because it's just as advanced as computing on a completely different level.
Well, you mentioned light, and I know that I know Black Knight has thought of this when we're talking about survival in space. Now, there's space with technology, which is fun because you can sort of write it off. They're going to put out grow lights. They're going to have hydroponics, things like that, and certainly on ships.
It's not easy. The hydroponics. No.
I know it's going to be very difficult, but when you're talking about light levels, we can, as human beings, I can make my own fertilizer. And you said that's, you used to call it night soil. So you would eat a meal and you're going to create fertilizer. It's what you do. Everything that you do, if you save it and you put it into the soil again, it will create the proper conditions if you make sure that soil is sterilized afterwards. And you have to do it by heating the soil and composting it. It will heat and kill the microbes. What do you do about light? You can't do anything about it if the sun is not there. And how do we know this? Go to Alaska or Norway or any place where you have the eternal night of winter and you have only a few months of full sun during the summer, but you don't always have light for the time you need it to grow things. So you have to grow what light allows. And when you're in low light conditions, when you're in a place where there's not enough sun, or the clouds come every day and you don't get enough sun for your plants, you're going to die if you don't find a way to get sunlight there. How do you do that when you don't have electricity? How are you going to accomplish this? And it's a very difficult conundrum. Light is the difference between life and death when we're talking about agriculture and food, because it's almost impossible to get that level of light up with anything less than full technology. If you don't have it already, you can find ways to concentrate it. You can actually find lenses that can help you. And that's a possibility when you're talking about perhaps pre-electric worlds where you have glass that will focus light to maybe make a patch, but that's very labor intensive. And so when we're looking at those things, light is the one thing. We can find a way to get water to a plant. We can find a way to get fertilizer and nutrient into the soil. Without light, we cannot do it. That is the magic of it. And that's the reason why people, especially agrarian societies, have thrived closer to temperate zones and into the equators, because we have to have light to grow things. Now, what happens in those kind of areas? They actually move towards the animal side of agrarian society. They move towards grass and things to feed their cattle. They feed them, and they have a very rich diet that's heavy in milk and meat. And they may grow sheep or something like that, where there's smaller animals that can live through low light conditions. in the winter and make it all the way through to summer. And then the light comes back and the fields come back and they harvest the hay and they put it back aside. There are ways to live in a lower light environment, but it requires us to know something about it. It requires us to think about these things when we're writing these situations for a deep space world. And like I said, for the nice part about science fiction is that it does usually have some sort of technological elements. In Watcher of the Damned, they had that knowledge. They've lost it because they became so dependent on their devices that they didn't really have to know anything anymore because AI did everything for them. They have to relearn how to grow a patch of crops. And so for them, they are living in Texas, and unfortunately for them, they're also living in Texas. That means they had to modify what kind of things they're growing. They don't grow a lot of wheat. They grow some corn. They finally figured out how to do that again. Things that last, the seeds that actually will still be there. There are things that you can grow years later. You can find a dried husk of corn with a few seeds still sticking to it, and if it hasn't been irradiated or heated, you can plant that and try to grow it. But there are things that don't grow well in Texas, like wheat, something like that. They have to bring back that knowledge. And then there are other places in the world of Watcher of the Damned where they're very heavily into hydroponics because they are living underground in technological wonderlands, and they are able to use hydroponics to grow some of their crops. And so you have this split in the two different worlds, one that's a subsistence farming survival hellhole where they can't still really get their agricultural act together. And then you have other ones that can grow a hydroponic gardens, but they have a hard time getting enough to feed the people in their holes. And so they're having to meet on the surface to try to grow these crops and to learn how to do things. And it becomes an important point in the economy of Watcher of the Damned, and including that revolution that takes place. It is heavily dependent on the fact that they need labor to help pick these crops that they are trying to so desperately to grow. So when we look at those elements that we have in our worlds, light, soil, water, seed, or animals, and how you process the food that comes from them. You talked about the food raining down. It's so much that it becomes a problem, rotting, going to waste. Nobody knows what to do with it. There's just too much of it there. This actually happened in real life. After the Green Revolution, which is in the 1960s, Borlaug, who actually comes up with the ability to create new types of triticale, which is a type of wheat, which would grow double the crops. They started doing the genetic modification for some of our corn and wheat crops, and they created what's called the Green Revolution. And also this happened in China with rice, just like you're talking about, where they were suddenly able to break through that barrier of genetic modification through breeding programs and created these types of wheat and corn, and the crops doubled. Well, in Pakistan, they actually planted these crops. The harvest was so abundant, they didn't have enough workers to bring it all in. They had to shut down the schools to store the wheat because there was so much of it that they couldn't find a place to put it. Overabundance and the inability to preserve can be just as devastating as not having enough. There's nobody to harvest it. There's nobody way to bring it in. The food goes to waste in the field, and it can actually change the makeup of the soil to where you can't plant that same crop again because it's falling back down into it. And we need to plant wheat to grow on it, but if there's too much acid in that soil, it may not grow again. And with decaying matter, it becomes acidic. So that is certainly something that we don't think of very often, is what happens when there's overabundance, when there's too much. That's when the feast comes in. That's when the harvest festival comes and all the extra is eaten and put away. But when there's so much that it literally floods a community, it's both a cause for rejoicing and also the understanding that now the society has to meet the abundance, has to build something bigger, something faster. Maybe they're going to have to make machines to harvest this because there aren't enough people to harvest the wheat. And that's exactly what happened in the 1960s. They actually had this explosion of agricultural growth that was almost impossible to keep up with at the time. And we're still seeing the effects of that today.
Very interesting. So that's another aspect there when it comes to fiction, is how does solving the agriculture problem affect your economy, affect your world, affect your culture. But Black Knight, I think I interrupted you. I'm sure you had something interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking about what to say next. I was asked about the mumpa trees earlier, and as you mentioned that when we're talking about farming, we often forget that it's like computing, but on a microbiological scale. And some in their fiction, they have these um, hybrids, which are the product of technology, like let's say nanotechnology and um, genetic engineering and splicing like animal genes with plants or vice versa. When in this case, the bumper trees, they're nobody knows exactly what they were. And Lily, as an exobiologist, like as a junior exobiologist, she was part of a team which attempted to complete like an extensive study of the mamba trees without harming them. They were just moving them around. They had these uh, special tractors with robotic arms, so they could uproot the tree and move it somewhere, like replant it, because in the beginning they did not know the true nature of the bumper trees. But eventually she learned a lot about them, and um, without giving too many spoilers, they are they are both natural and not so natural. I mean, they were maybe in the beginning not as natural as they were, but they were created from something that evolved, a plant that evolved, which we have similar plants here, like these special trees that grow in such a way that provide shelter for bugs to live inside them. I don't know if you read about these, but they exist, and they are of these type of plants which survive and expand by offering symbiosis with bugs or animals or other plants. And in the case of the mumpa trees, they have spores like mushrooms, like what was the Latin name of the mushrooms? I forgot. But yes, they have spores. They they are quite active plants. They're not just like standing in one place and just growing roots deep and then spreading the roots. Um, they of course they require um, a much rich in like a much richer in nutrients diet, meaning they could munch on animals. They could catch them if they want to, and they are they're what helps people to terraform planets faster eventually, because they learn how to understand the trees, the quote unquote trees. I mean, they call them trees because they look like trees, but they're not true trees. They're not. Perhaps they once they were trees, then they're not. Right now, they learned how to understand them and how to help them, and the trees the trees learned more about the humans. They're not like one could say that they are semi-sentient because of the spores, which goes into something else that I probably mentioned in one of our earlier streams about the mushrooms, the species of mushrooms, that we have spores in us. Like the earlier humans evolved because of these mushrooms, because they ingested the spores, and the spores jump started the like the last stage of the evolution of our brains. And there is a lot of research to corroborate that. Therefore, I've used it. So the mumpa trees, they are a way to bring balance to the soil. And they can move, or they can be moved without a problem. And depending on what you give them, they will restore the balance of the soil, so it's not too acidic. It's like has plenty of minerals. It's of course their roots can both extract minerals and deposit minerals back, because they have evolved to do that. And humans, Terrans in general, they learned that the trees, they like bodies. If you feed them the unalived invaders, they will be quite helpful for your agricultural efforts later, because they will enrich the surrounding soils, and their roots can intertwine with the roots of other trees or other mumpa trees, and they can spread all of the minerals and everything else in more distant fields, which other plants, then when you plant the crops, they can use this to grow better yields. So this is one of the mysteries of that universe, that how did these mumpa trees actually evolve to be such a natural terraformer, quote unquote. Were they like a pure product of genetic engineering or nanotechnology or whatever, or they pre-existed their modification in some way, and they were just helped by some ancient species which desire to have sustainable farming, and without destroying its planets, and then like making it a more like natural way of soil enrichment and just everything else, because they do not only enrich the soil, they can interconnect their branches, and they can grow these almost like these tubes, like these plants that exist in the jungle, which when you cut them, you can drink water from them, because they collect water, rainwater, and such, and you have like a huge network of them in between the different trees and plants in the jungle, so they can do that too.
You mentioned actually the mushrooms. We were talking earlier about low light conditions, and the answer for a low light farm is mushrooms. Now, they're not high in calories, They're usually very low in calories, and they don't have very much in the way of protein at all or fats. That actually means they're healthy for you if you're trying to lose weight. But what they do have is they have a lot of potassium, phosphorus, zinc, and magnesium. They also have vitamin B, which is very important in the diet. And so if you had a world that was low light, you might be able to have your people grow mushrooms. And in fact, mushrooms, once you learn how to grow them, they have to be super careful. I used to go mushrooming with my mother when I was little, and there are very, very specific ones that you can eat because they're known to be certainly edible, but they also are very dangerous types. So first of all, let me say right now, if you don't know what you're doing, don't go eat a mushroom out of your yard. It can kill you. Especially the deadly amanita, which is a white, beautiful mushroom, looks like a puffball. Don't do it. I do know how to check for deadly mushrooms, and I grew up with them. But mushrooms are a fantastic source of certain minerals, which are usually hard to come by in a non-agrarian society. So if you have in your book a low light condition, and let's say deep space, or someplace where they're actually having to grow things without that technology, mushrooms might be something that they would actually grow, and they would have to have logs or some kind of organic material. They would have to have the spores available, and then of course some sort of breakdown of minerals, so that way it actually gets a slight mist, and you just put them in there and they will grow on their own. And I think that that's something that I actually might look at, because I know there's a point in my book where I was going to look at having them grow mushrooms. I would like to see if I can do it actually in a closet or something, or a box. And if
yes, you can. You can.
think about this, because I've never.
It has to be chill. It has to be chill and moist.
Has to be, so it has to be cool and moist. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you actually grown mushrooms? Have you actually?
Yes, I did. I had I worked for a small place, and they had it was a village like outside the city, and they had in one of their like old barns, they had a basement, and which is like was pretty cramped, but it was long basement, like I think like 40 meters or 50 meters long. Wow. And they had these logs, split logs with like holes in them, and we were hired to make sure that it was moist, that you didn't have like spoiled mushrooms, like rotten mushrooms, because they could destroy, kill off the entire crop.
Wow.
And it wasn't that hard, but it was like laborious, and you had this weird smell, because it would seep in your skin, and you would smell of soil, like of cold soil. Everywhere you go, like people would turn around and like sniff the air. They like, it's not a bad smell, but it's weird.
It's noticeable.
Yeah, it's not, and it was hard. It was hard because if you would not see, if you miss the like one or two of like the sick mushrooms, they would rot away, and all of this would spread, and that it's like entire logs would be contaminated, and you'll just have to throw them away.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's another that's another aspect
and
experience can give you.
And one last thing, when mushrooms are dried, they actually are one of the few non-animal sources of vitamin D. So you can, if they're dried down, and they usually, if they don't have light, they won't create this vitamin D on their own. But when you dry it, it concentrates.
Yeah, but it has to be sun dried.
Yeah. So you put them out, and they
like
will
the sun dried tomatoes.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But yeah, so if you ever crave mushrooms, the chances are maybe you're low on vitamin D, and they're a natural source. So your people in your stories, if they need a source of vitamin D, if they don't have milk or cows or something else, dried mushrooms would certainly be a way to get that. And if they don't have access to light that much, they might be able to put that out in a little box and then be able to eat it and keep themselves alive. And certainly that's something that could be done in space, would be actually growing mushrooms, and they're also fantastic medicine.
Yes, and you could knowing the volatility of mushrooms as well could be used as a plot point. How do you put your civilization or your colony in a jeopardized position? Well, the mushrooms went bad, destroyed the entire crop. So all of that kind of comes with both experience and just research. What can you grow in space in dim light? Mushrooms. What can go bad easily and ruin the entire crop? Mushrooms. There's a lot. Story-wise, you can simply pull strictly from mushrooms.
Yeah, it's I was surprised because when I went there, it was like, yeah, they're like freaking immortal, them mushrooms. Like they just spring after the rain, they grow everywhere. You just have to know which are not, like, which are the poisonous ones. No, it's simple. And when I went there, it was like, boy, it's not that simple. Do you see that? And I'm like, well, what is this? Well, this like, do you see this like strange discoloration on that mushroom? And I'm like, what discoloration? I don't see shit. And yeah, I think I learned a little because sadly I couldn't work more than like 3 months or something. Was it 3 months? I think it was 3 months. Because they had to move the farm. They found, like, they expanded their operation. They found another place in a much more distant village. They actually found like a place which was, in the past, it was like one of these commie cow farms, and they had like basements in these huge barnyards for the cows, and they bought the entire farms. They took a loan, they purchased the entire farm, and they had like pre-existing buildings which they only had to like refurbish them, and they would be able to grow like 15 times more mushrooms than previously. But the problem was too far away, and I couldn't go there to, like, I couldn't travel there to work. Otherwise, and they did pay well. The problem was that you had to wear protective clothing. You had to have a mask and goggles, because one of the guys there said that some people, if they got like especially moldy mushroom spores in their eyes, they could get like serious infections. I was like, it depends on the person. So yeah, it was a strange but rewarding experience. Yeah,
you can learn a lot. People say touch grass, is a simple
touch mushroom.
Yeah, right. Learn, touch dirt, learn about dirt. There's an entire field of study behind dirt, and you'd be surprised how it's like.
Wait, I have a haiku for that.
Yeah, go ahead. As he finds the haiku, there's like, an entire microscopic bug civilization underneath your feet. I think they say that there's more biological mass under the dirt than there is above it, which is an interesting fact there. But all of this comes in handy when you're exploring this subject, because it is a bit of a niche subject. When people think about agriculture, they think about all the things that kind of go into it. And in the majority of fictional stories, that is just hand waved away, and I think as authors, the more we embrace this agriculture world we live in and find out um, how it actually operates. It's going to help us really shape up stories that we didn't even know were there. But go ahead, Black Knight.
And before I found the haiku, but before I read the haiku, I remember stuff that happened during the coup, and it was like, I don't know. I watched a clip of a young woman, and she was like protesting against farming, and she was like, no, this is evil. They shouldn't, like, they should stop killing animals. They should go to the grocery, it's like the store, and buy their packed meat there.
Yeah, that sounds like some good old logical fallacy wrapped in a big sloth
No,
of
no, no. She
ignorance.
was actually meaning it. She
No, I
was not.
know, but that's the logical fallacy plus ignorance.
Yeah. So this haiku is actually about the garden. It's titled Garden. So I am the outside, shoveling dirt over seeds. A garden is born.
Ooh.
It's one of my older ones. It's probably the 30th one that I wrote. It's not that good.
That's very nice.
But you have this unique dark place, which is outer space, and even if you do not use faster than light,
Mhm.
it gets darker and darker, and you have to solve like unique problems, which might not be as unique as most people think, because in certain times here on Earth, these problems were solved, and even without space age technology. I am not aware if you know about these underground cities, which are found in different areas of the world. For example, there are some in Turkey. They were dug in like on multiple levels in the rock. It was a softer rock. I think it was like limestone or something. And they had entire herds of animals there, ventilation and stuff. And they had, James, they had mushroom farms, which
That is so cool.
they had special spots in these mushroom farms, because underground it gets sometimes I mean they have to get some like warmth, so they use the unique solution, because they needed the biomass, they needed the wood and such to like create the biomass for the mushrooms to grow, the spores to grow. So they couldn't just like use all the wood for firewood, and so they burned dried manure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that on the American prairie as well. There wasn't wood, but you could grow. You would use cow chips, and in fact, they were considered to be, in some cases, a superior burn because they would last longer, depending on the moisture content.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that they say they're not sure. By the way, they're not sure, but they say that they had lamps, which they were not lamps with oil, but they were lamps with powders different powders. They had like some understanding of basic chemistry, and when you combine different powders, they would begin to smolder and then burn, and that would unleash a chemical flame, a chemical light. So it's almost like these glow sticks that you shake them and they glow, but it's like a super primitive version of that. I don't know, probably because they didn't have oil, or maybe they had oil but it was precious and they had to find a way to have some light in, like, deep in these like underground man-made cities. They had to have some light. Yeah, so I think that's probably enough for that topic.
We've definitely dug into it for sure,
Ooh,
and I think we've walked away with a lot more knowledge on mushrooms than I think we were expecting.
really? I
But
know mushroom farm now. That's so cool.
but with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Let's start off with you, RH Snow. What's some of your final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Thank you. I've loved this topic. I think it's so important. And just the fact that getting your hands dirty, getting yourself out there, terraform your own little place, and start learning about the things you're wanting to write about. If nothing else, you're going to come away with a beautiful watermelon, maybe, or you'll come away with regret and I hope you can do it again the next year. And you'll try again. And welcome to the world of farming. And you can find me at watcherthedam.com, where I'm selling all of my books, including my latest book, Caviar Del Camino, which is the 8th book in the series, along with my world guide and my TTRPG. And I am still working on the 9th book, and I hope to have it finished here within this next couple of weeks for Hellbelly Highway, which will be coming out before the end of the year. And you can find me there. You can also find me at flow.page/rhsnow. That's flow.page/rhsnow. And all my books, of course, are on Amazon under the title Watcher of the Damned. And I would love to have you read it. So if you get a chance, go look at it. It's got plenty of farming in it. That's for sure.
Fun. All right, Black Knight, you're up next. What are some of your final thoughts? Where can people find you?
Well, if you're not sure about agriculture, just go and find some tomato seeds, get like a pot, a normal pot, and plant the tomato seeds and grow them from seedlings. You'll be amazed. I did that in my home. I don't have, like, it's just a small apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I grew a full-fledged tomato plant. I grew many of them, and I had like a small crop of quite yummy and surprisingly large tomatoes. And it was not easy, but it was rewarding. And when one of the plants snapped and it died because I wasn't careful,
Yeah.
it hit me hard. So yeah, that's do try, please. And,
it's definitely an experience.
Oh yeah, it's a rewarding experience. As for where you can find me, you can visit my Substack page, which is the blackknight.substack.com, where you can find all my poems, my haiku, my tanka, the serialized stories, the free novellas, or if you want to buy some alternate history, space opera, you can go to Amazon and grab any of my Star Shatter books. Any of the two story collections, A Mandate of Sword of the Dragon or The Blood of Tyrants. And if you like shadow fantasy, old school fantasy, you can grab a copy of Lord of Bones. So yeah, that's and they all have lots of farming in them, all of them.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you all for joining us today. If you're going ahead and like the stream and you're part of the replay crew, go ahead, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you're doing, and let us know what you think about this subject matter. Give it a like, share with your friends. Thank you for stopping by. We always appreciate you spending time with us. But we are out of here.